Hello everyone, this is the Sage of Calidor. It is good to be back. How are you doing? I am good. Well, I'm going to try to get another video out every couple weeks. So yeah, please bear with me as I keep going. I've been doing fine. It is just I've been substituting a lot recently, and it is rather hard, exhausting, plus a lot of other projects. But I'm learning to balance my time. This this video is the last of a what looked like a trilogy of videos involving these two. Um, just to remind everyone, this all started because I got into an argument with someone about lore and game mechanics regarding Valkia the Blood Queen. We started with Valkia, and then to prove my point, talk about Valkia, about how if you want to basically, if you want to, like, basically on how there's disputes whether or not Valkia is a demon princess or not, and the lore written in recent editions says she is, like, talks about going through the osmosis, but some people have been saying no, it has been retcon from 7th edition to 8th edition, but at the same time, I'm glad Games Workshop. I'm glad Creative Assembly gave it so Valkia could get the demonic rule because of the whole fight and such, and to basically prove my point about the concept of balancing with game mechanics. I showed using my all too favorite elves, especially the high elves, which I take pride of liking the elves as a matter of fact, on how with an equal amount of points, Tyrion and a high elf prince could give each other a more or less equal um, more or less an equal battle. Where in the lore, Tyrion would defeat the prince more or less easily, save for a few other named characters, which is not for the purpose of any video. And today is going to be the final part of this trilogy, which is quite simply how to retcon lore successfully. And I cannot think of any better individual, and of course the elves. And I'm going to pick the high elves again because the high elves are the race, the faction that I picked for my first army, and I know a lot about them. But this would have elements of the wood elves and the dark elves too. And I figure it would be a good idea to work around a faction that I like because the elves have some things that I like or some things I can work with about lore that is retconned and lore that is not retconned. Now, I'm going to show you some examples of it. The first example is the High Elf Dragon Princes of Calidor and their Dragon Armor of Calidor, which grants a Dragon Prince's immunity to fire attacks. And this was my favorite thing in playing 7th edition because a few times I would fight Skaven. My friend would fight using Skaven and using Demons of Chaos, and I would, and he would use Tzeentchian guys for part of his army. One thing that the Tzeentchian army has is flaming attacks, so you can guess who I would send the Dragon Princes right into. Yep, they would run all over the Tzeentchian army, and he could not do a single thing about it. I loved that a lot. But in um, 8th edition, it has been the immunity of fire attacks was replaced with a 2+ ward save, which I was rather upset about because it removed the immunity to fire damage. And I was kind of upset because it went against the lore mechanic, but with consulting my friend and with taking a look, I kind of realized that, well, my friend said there is a good chance that my Dragon Prince will survive from the attack anyway. I mean, 2+ ward save is easy to get. Of course, it took me a while to come to realize that, because I admit when it first came out, I had a habit of rolling a lot of ones, and so I was far from pleased with that. And so your Dragon Princes have a high degree of survivability, but you can make the argument the horses are not resistant to fire attacks, and fire could still, in certain cases, get around the armor. And at the end of the day, I feel like it's a game mechanic, but if you think about it, it's kind of possible for it. I mean, there's no way the rules were against the lore, because we have not read the rules. Said fire bounces off. The lore says fire bounces off the armor. The game mechanic, partially to make things fair for those fighting against the elves, but respecting the lore, I think 12+ ward save is the best case scenario, and you can make the argument, as something I recently found out while looking for this, or recently thought about, is the fire could get to the horses. Like, the princes might be unscathed, but the horses might be hurt or burned, and they might fall down and die, and the Dragon Princes will be incapacitated from falling. So that is one retcon thing successfully that I will work as far as games would go. The next one is different, and it has to do with the Elven Pantheon. The Elven Pantheon, as you can see, has about 22 deities, 22 gods and goddesses. A pantheon of the heavens and the pantheon of the underworld. Now, beginning, it said the Dark Elves, or who would become the Dark Elves, several of them were corrupted by Slaanesh. And this was what was true for earlier editions. But recent editions did not follow that. Recent editions created the elves had a pantheon of the heavens and pantheon of the underworld, and they were able to make this work with the whole most, if not elves, not being attached to Slaanesh thing work. They said elven souls are tasty to Slaanesh, but since elves live a long time, they can do a lot of things for both good and bad. And as a result, you could say, or in spite of that, the elves have two pantheons. And elves, the pantheon of the heavens, as shown previously, which emphasizes the good aspect of their nature, and the pantheon of the underworld, which emphasizes the more darker aspects of their nature. And the pantheon of the underworld is meant to follow certain set rituals and rules to protect the elves from Slaanesh. And this is something I can get behind. The reason why is, instead of the whole Cain Slaanesh thing, developed an entire pantheon, added more to the elven culture, and read about it that and basically wrote about how it is important these deities for, are given a certain amount of respect and due to each other, or else bad things will happen. Alright, so this third one and final one takes place in the end times, and this is them. The story they have is Malekith was all along meant to be the rightful heir to the Phoenix throne. He walks through the shrine of Asurian, and he was told he needed, if he stayed in the shrine for a little bit more, he would have been called Phoenix King, because he needed to learn the lesson of self-sacrifice. And all the other Phoenix Kings that came before him, and to an extent after him, were cheaters, because they went through with special enchantments. This third and final, this poses a problem, because the previous lore said that is custom. The next Phoenix King is escorted by the Phoenix Guard, and the candidate is blessed by priests of Asurian. The Phoenix King candidate walks through the shrine and then comes back out as the next Phoenix King. This does not work, because I cannot understand why the priests of Asurian would go against the will of Asurian when Asurian had blessed and protected the temple and blessed the Phoenix Guard. I do not see how this mistake could happen. Now, the end times made a lot of mistakes, let's be honest. And I'm going to go, and this mess can be solved with an easy fix. Because Malekith, because it could be said that the Phoenix Kings that went through the shrines were actually regents, which is why they were afforded extra protection. They were afforded some degree of protection, because they were not true rulers. The reason why they were called Phoenix Kings could be, say, a translation error, like when a priest of Asurian was giving dictates information from Asurian, and say the priest made a slight mistranslation on how the spells and such are supposed to work. Asurian meant to correct this mess, but then chaos happened, and as it said in other pieces of information, ever since chaos arrived, the gods of the world could only act indirectly. And should it have happened like that, this explanation could happen like that, the other Phoenix Kings were not true Phoenix Kings, but regents, it can explain why it seemed like Asurian blessed and protected them, but then did a 180 and said they were all cursed. Of course, at the same time, Malekith needed to go through a bit of a redemption arc, which Major Kill did. His YouTube channel did an excellent job at making the end times actually work, the elves, and I encourage you to take a look at it. So in conclusion, These are the three examples on how to retcon something correctly. The first one, the Dragon Princes of Calidor, the lore about the invincibility of their dragon armor, and the rules of the game. If you look at it, you can argue that the dragon armor still does its job and protects the dragon princes from fire attacks. It still works in rather effective armor. They lost their ability to be entirely resistant to fire attacks and laugh at your opponent whenever he does fire attacks at you. Instead, you have to roll and pray you don't roll once. But you can argue that if even the princes are fine, they well, yeah, even the princes are fine. Their horses might not be fine, and if the horses die, the dragon princes will be incapacitated. The second one, the lore one, it shifted from some else being seduced by Slaanesh to being seduced by the elven pantheon of the underworld. I will say this, in the newer ones, you do not see that, especially in the trilogy of the Sundering. It offers more information. The newer books mention the elven pantheon of the underworld a lot, as well as the elven pantheon of the heavens. This is a correct way to retcon. Some of the details remain the same. They are still called the cults of excess, the cults of pleasure, but their deities changed to deities that you could say mirror the chaos god Slaanesh, but is at the same time a bit different in its own way. And it fits in with the elven culture, the elven psyche, that they live a long time, and they can do a lot of things, both good and bad. And also mentions how Slaanesh finds, because the elves live a long time, find their souls relatively tasty. Also, elves have a tendency to be more in tuned and sensitive to pleasures rather than humans do. So it makes sense they would have a pantheon of the underworld to protect their souls. Of course, granted, the elven pantheon of the underworld, their prices are very high. I did also mention a mistake made in Retcon and like a little bit of a disaster and an example on what the Retcon should not have been. And hence, whole Malekith going through the shrine, and gave my own example in which it could easily be solved with a few, like turning the other Phoenix Kings into simply regents, and a translation error which Asuryan meant to fix, which was why Asuryan's and the priests still blessed the Phoenix Kings even though they were not true Phoenix Kings. Anyway, this concludes my series. I'm planning on don't know what my next video topic is, but thank you very much for showing patience with me, and I'll see you around. Bye.